Tasmania. The Honourable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, my question without notice is to the Treasurer. Treasurer, I invite you to go back half a decade to your Banana Republic speech in which you said, and I quote, "If we don't make it this time, we never will make it. If this government cannot get the adjustment, get manufacturing going again and keep moderate wage outcomes and a sensible economic policy, then Australia is basically done for. We will just end up being a third-rate economy." And I note, Treasurer, that at that time foreign debt was about $75 billion. Today it's $131 billion, and as shown by the balance of payments figure out today, is still rising. I ask you, Treasurer, when will you get your policies right?
The Honourable Treasurer.
But with all the studied sincerity of a police court solicitor, the last part of the question. Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker.
The member for Gippsland. The member for Gippsland will cease interjecting.
The fact is, Mr Speaker, that the adjustments which have occurred since 1985 have been nothing short of profound in the Australian economy. For a start, we've taken a huge structural deficit bequeathed to us by your indolence and turned into a structural surplus, the first in the nation's history. We have presided over a large correction to our competitiveness via the exchange rate, with all of the attendant inflationary effects, and then come to terms with them. We've restructured the tax system in favour of equities against debt, which you were happy to see, with equities taxed twice. So supposedly the party of business, you're quite happy to see 78 cents in the dollar taxation every dollar of company income, which murdered all of the income-producing businesses in this country and played in the hands of the stock market speculators who bought out companies and sold off the assets. We've changed all that. We've totally opened up the financial market.
Members of the opposition will cease interjecting.
I
warn the member for Gippsland.
We've had an enormous boom in investment in the meantime, so large that it put pressure on the current account deficit. In other words, we have underpinned the change to a more productive country by more investment, which you were incapable of doing. They're the changes since 1985. And while the debt has continued to grow, the fact of the matter is the great growth in the debt to GDP occurred between 1981 and 1984. And, well, if you think it's a fabrication, just have a look at the Business Council documents on the Competitiveness Summit this week, in the paper prepared by Dr Shan and Dr Fitzgerald, and look at the debt in the table and graph in relation to debt to GDP, and you'll see that the debt villain is no other than J.W. Howard, sitting over there, the member for Bennelong, who watched the big increase in debt, and it's now only slightly increased from that. But the damage was done. Damage was done. It has. It has.
Order.
The damage was done. In those
members of the opposition will cease interjecting. Order. The Treasurer might resume his seat. Order. The House will come to order. The member for Bennelong will cease interjecting. The member for Bennelong will cease interjecting. The Honourable Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, in turn, if the opposition is so interested in guffawing, turn up the work of people who support your point of view and look at debt to GDP between 81 and 84 and from 84 onwards, and you'll find, I'm not exaggerating the position, one iota, not one iota. Now, Mr Speaker, the productive damage was done. I mean, the Deputy Leader gets up and asks this question as though he is, has some sort of virtue on his side and the fact of the matter is that the reason Australia has a productive weakness is because of the indolence of 25 years of coalition government. You sat there at about the time Harold Holt died, from the time Harold Holt died to 1983.
Members on my left will cease interjecting. Members of the opposition will cease interjecting. Order. The Treasurer might resume his seat. If members on my left continue to interject, I will give them one warning and then I will name them. The Honourable Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, in the period from 25 years from 1968 to 1983, they were the years when it was obvious to any student of the Australian economy that the terms of trade were letting Australia down, that commodities alone would not cover our production, our imports, and we needed a stronger basis in production. Nothing was done of a structural nature in all of those years. There was a Labor government for 3 years in those 25 years. So you were there for 22 of the 25 years. Nothing structural was done until this government came to office in 1983. And as I said, by then the debt damage had been done and the structural changes had taken place from 1985 to this period, and more of which you'll see in the Prime Minister's statement next week have been done by this government. So don't suggest that any smarmy question you ask has the slightest virtue whatsoever.
Order.